Welcome to the Dynamic Leadership Live Series. Today, we're wrapping up the one-to-one leadership portion. That perspective we covered in February, and next week we shift to one-to-many leadership. Think executive leadership, setting the climate for high performance. For the past month, we focused on one-to-one leadership. Team leadership, yes, but that leadership level happens one-to-one, and we'll talk about some of that today. Before that, we focused on agency, regulation, and personal leadership under pressure. Those are prerequisites to being able to detect and adjust the trajectory of those who are reporting to you. When I talk about managing and leading, and I may use the word employees, but it applies to associates. I recognize that there are many virtual assistants, there are associates, remote workers, there are people you may not even know, there are people who rotate through. It includes all of that. So today we talk about that inflection point. Dynamic leadership exists because the narrative has shifted. For decades, leadership development emphasized insight, motivation, and behavioral compliance. What we now understand is more fundamental. Performance is governed by patterned subconscious signaling, and those patterns are modifiable. That's the point. Until recently, it was widely accepted that people can't change, and that they don't change. Dynamic leadership provides the recipe to do just that. There are 3 levels of habit: behavioral habits, what you do; reactive habits, how you respond or actually react; and construct habits like identity, confidence, personality. And those were thought to be the most persistent. And in fact, in the early days of emotional intelligence, it was stated that intelligence is not going to change, personality is not going to change. But that was before we had the brain scanning tools available to see what's really going on. Most leadership work targets behavior. Meanwhile, automation is accelerating exponentially. We're now on the vertical portion of that technology curve, that scaling curve. You know, the one technology capability will double every 18 months. That's been going on for several decades now. This is where capability compounds rapidly because that part of the curve is vertical. Now, it may look like more of the same, just faster, but the reality is that it's more different than most people realize, much more. Consider advertising. Advertising has always influenced people to act in ways that they didn't initially intend. Everyone has experienced buying something and never using it. Critical thinking has traditionally helped protect against that influence, but automation now allows systems to leverage cognitive biases at unprecedented speed and precision. Here's an example. Before the year 2000, there was a stock newsletter company, and I lived through this. I watched it, but I didn't know what was going on at the time. They would send predictions to hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions. And only those who received correct predictions continued to receive updates. And that continued to scale to where they got that last group that had received several rounds, each with a correct prediction. So a subset of readers experienced multiple accurate predictions in a row. That's confirmation bias. It took hold. The source became credible in the subconscious, and trust formed automatically. It can take many incorrect predictions to break that credibility, yet it only takes a few correct ones every now and then to maintain it. It takes about 3 or 4 to establish it, intermittent to maintain it or sustain it, and it's very difficult to break it. Now that company gained massive high-ticket subscriptions. Was it expensive for them? Yes. Was it valuable for the company? Certainly. For consumers, not always. And there are different variations of this, but that company was so successful, it was well beyond any other stock newsletter at the time. What does this have to do with leadership? Managers and leaders carry amplified influence inside organizations. In times of uncertainty and volatility, that influence increases because people look for certainty and direction. Confirmation bias is just one of dozens of cognitive biases shaping decisions every day. These biases operate before the conscious mind, often within fractions of a second, and the conscious mind then receives the reaction as the truth. Automation allows actors to compress these cycles dramatically. What once unfolded over months can now occur in hours or days. Imagine interacting with several ads for a product. Each click trains the system to deliver increasingly tailored messages to you. By the third or fourth interaction, perception shifts and desire feels internally generated, again, like truth, even though it was progressively shaped on purpose by an outside actor. Now, imagine that process applied not to products, but to narratives, ideologies, or perceptions about your organization or brand, or maybe something you believe. Conventional leadership approaches are too slow for this environment. Technology itself is neutral. Automation is not the problem, but accelerated systems amplify both positive and negative influence. Dynamic leadership addresses this reality by targeting the signaling patterns that generate behavior, first to build agency, and then to recognize patterns in others and adjust trajectory early, before cognitive biases and habit loops compound. And that's the major shift. To do this before cognitive biases come in, because they come in before the conscious mind is aware, and that's how they get perceived as truth. When you interrupt before the cognitive biases come online, you're able to disrupt that process